Jordan, welcome to Rally, to the Rally Founders Talk. It's a pleasure having you here today. Not sure how much you know about Rally, but let me just kind of give you a little heads up on what we care about.
That'd be great.
The reason why we're here and we exist is because we're trying to help entrepreneurs in the very early stages of building their ventures create positive or create sustainable ventures that create positive social change. And so one of the other things that's interesting about Rally is that we believe that there's social entrepreneurs all around the world who are trying to solve these social, environmental, economic issues. And Orlando has all the talent, the networks, the resources in order to help them along the way. So we believe that Orlando will be and is a hub for social entrepreneurs no matter where they're at. And so that explains why we have fellows from all across the United States and also the world joining us. And so that's why we exist, and that's why we care, and that's why you're here, because we're trying to showcase some of that talent. Say, hey, come to Orlando, and so it's a pleasure having you here today. Listen, man, how we always like to open these things up is a question that's kind of a curveball.
Okay. I'm ready.
But trust me, you know the answers. But let's talk about Baby Jordan. All right. So
Baby Jordan.
So who is Baby Jordan? More importantly, what we want to understand about Baby Jordan is what were some of the, how did you grow up, and what were some of the influences that helped nurture you into who you are today in terms of as an entrepreneur or also an individual?
Yeah, I love this question. Really great start for the morning. So my dad was a financial advisor growing up. My mom was a teacher. So I saw two very opposite ends of the spectrum as far as people go. So my dad is very, I guess, prestigious is the word, has every degree known to man, and is very just cut and dry, as like these financial advisor type people are. Whereas my mom, on the other hand, she was or still is, a preschool teacher. So she's got arts and science and English and all these different things, just so creative all the time. And so, I think I got a good blend of kind of the two growing up. So, any one given day, everything could just be kind of total chaos with my mom's creativity and just her mind flowing throughout what we were doing as kids. But on other days, I have the strictness and the sternness of my dad, who's like, no, we're going to do things this way. And it's kind of very cut and dry with him. So I had a good combination of the two growing up. And I was really lucky in that my mom being a teacher, I was exposed to just a lot of different things. So everything from sports, to writing, to reading, to art, to design. I was exposed to all of it. And then through my dad, I was kind of exposed through the business side of things, if you will. So, kind of helping put together a plan behind those things. I was always a little hustler and entrepreneur, kind of growing up. And so I was able to kind of take what my dad had taught me just from a, really, really high level. I was still a young kid, and apply that to some of the stuff that I was doing. One thing that I love to joke about is when I was in first grade, I actually went to the golf course near my parents' neighborhood, and I was selling beer to golfers in first grade on the back of, just learning basic economics through my dad. And then some, in school, I was selling like Pokemon cards and stuff like that. But anyway, that's kind of like, what my childhood was like. And some of the main drivers, I think, really just between my mom and dad. I was able to kind of put the two together, and we arrived at who I am today.
Yeah. Did you?
I'm curious. I love the idea of the first grader selling beer to the golfers. Did I hear that right? First grade.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The story is wild. So we lived close-ish to a golf course, and my parents were always under the mindset of, if you want something, you have to pay for it yourself. I remember I would always do a joke, Dad, can I get this? And he goes, well, are you saving for it? Or like, how much do you have in your bank account for it? And again, I was in like first or second grade. I'm like, I have no money. Like, I don't have a job. So I figured out, okay, I'm going to go start a lemonade stand. So me and my neighbor, we started a lemonade stand, and the guys, they still weren't buying from us. And I was like, we're cute little kids. Like, who's not buying lemonade from us? But what I realized is they would still buy from the cart girls, but it's because they would buy alcohol from them. And I was like, okay, you know what? So my parents in their fridge had like a drawer in the very bottom that was just kind of like always stocked with like, 10 beers or so. Like, they wouldn't notice if like 3 or 4 went missing. So I would like, while they were napping or whatever, I'd run into the kitchen, steal them, and then run them outside. And I can't believe it in retrospect, that these golfers would buy beer from a kid who was in first grade, but they did probably because they were hammered by the time they got to me. So we sold them. And then I remember one day we ran out. It was really, the day was just like firing. I was like, man, I got to run back in and get more. But my parents were awake. They weren't napping. My mom was in the living room that was adjacent to our kitchen. And I was like, you know what? I got to risk it. And so I tried. And then I, of course, dropped one of the beer bottles. She was like, oh my God, Jordan, what's happening? Came outside, shut the entire thing down. I was like, oh my God, my son is selling beer. And yeah, that's the story.
I like it. I was trying to figure out what the motivation is, but it was the to get the cash, because your dad was pushing the purchase back on you, so you had to figure out how to get the cash.
Yep. If I wanted one of the little Beyblades or something like that, he's, you know, how are you gonna buy it? He would look at, I'd say, Dad, can I get this? He goes, yeah, you tell me, can you? So,
so the question is, did they ever notice that the beer was gone?
Oh, I mean, after my mom caught me that one day and shut the whole thing down, yeah, she found out, and the whole operation came to a screeching halt. So,
do you remember what type of beer it was? Was it like
Pabst?
Pabst
I don't.
or-
I could not tell you. Probably just something super normal. So
yeah, I think that's cool because you know, I think that entrepreneurs, there's something that resonates in your story with me in terms of like that whole selling thing, because I remember selling, I've told the story before, like selling chocolate covered ants because we saw it on TV. We thought it was cool. Kids bought it, ate it. We got in trouble, had to refund the money.
I'm sure.
I remember like we had a zoo where we just went around the neighborhood and collected all kind of animals that we can find and charge people money. And then
that's awesome.
And then in college, I had the only room at the time that had cable in it. So we spliced the cable line and sent it up the back of the dorm. We had about 20 accounts that we would charge $20 a month. And one day the dean came and started yelling at us and shut that down. And so there's a similar hustle, just like how do you leverage the resources there that you don't have to pay for, like ants and chocolate and
that's so funny.
Animals and cable that doesn't belong to you. But I'm glad, but you know, it's a similar thing. Like, so it's good to hear that story. So you grew up in what part of Florida? Did you grow up in Florida?
Well, so I was originally born in Boston, and then my parents' job brought us down to Jacksonville. So I'm only 2 hours away from there. So I spent the majority of my life in Jackson. At this point, I just say I'm from Jacksonville.
Okay.
But yeah, Florida boy.
Florida boy. Okay. So you went off to college in North Florida, I believe,
yep.
Right? And there, what did you study over there?
So I actually got my degree in management and marketing. And again, kind of keeping with the trend of my dad going, okay, well, if you want to go do the thing, you got to figure out how to pay for it. So I actually ran track in college to help pay my way through school, which was really cool. So, we'll get into it, but, starting one of my businesses, chasing 2 degrees and running track full time. So I was a pretty busy guy in college.
Were you fast?
Yeah, well, so I was actually originally got recruited as a jumper. So I was a pretty good high jumper and long jumper. And then during practice, my coach saw me sprint and he was like, oh, well, yeah, you're kind of fast too. We should have you do this event. And before you knew it, we don't need to get down the rabbit hole, but I ended up doing the decathlon in college. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's the 10 events over 2 days. So sprinting, pole vaulting, javelin, long distance jumping, everything kind of related. And that was a really, really awesome experience. So
that's cool, man. Okay. So you went studied, went to North Florida, and then I wanna, what, like somehow you end up in Kissimmee or involved with Yak, yelling over cubicles.
Across
Were you
cubicles.
there?
Yes.
Yelling across, yelling across cubicles. Were you there at the inception, or did you come on later on? Like to explain
No,
this.
I'm the founder. Yeah.
Okay, because I looked on it says COO, but I wasn't sure because I didn't see. Okay.
Oh yeah. So I have two co-founders. So I'll kind of get into our story. It's a little wild. So let's see, kind of going back to the inception, even before Yak, I have to give some context. So in college, my first day of college, I met my now co-founder, Hunter. The actually first day of college, my freshman year, happened to be my birthday. We got introduced through a mutual friend, and we just hit it off instantly, talking about everything from entrepreneurship, design, tech, marketing, music, sneakers, culture, just everything related. We instantly, became really, really good friends. And I met his girlfriend too, and she was just like really, really awesome. And so we all just kind of became friends. And then the following semester, him and I moved in together. And I remember that summer he ended up getting a job at the same company that our now third co-founder, Justin, had worked at. And so he's like, man, you got to meet Justin. You guys would hit it off. Like, you guys are so cool. Like, we all like really, really like the same stuff, and we're all really, really motivated. I was like, yeah, like I'm totally down. So we all met and got kind of talking and hung out. And then through that, we actually started our first company, which was a design agency called So Friendly. And So Friendly was this call to action to help other entrepreneurs, designers, and developers really kind of build and develop and scale things that people actually know and love. What you see a lot of the time is people can build something and have this really cool idea, but it's really hard for them to kind of wrap it, in a way that like makes sense to the normal everyday consumer, the normal everyday person. And so we said, you know what, we have a really good understanding of tech design and technology and development, and we have a really good understanding of culture. Let's bring the two together and make that happen. So at So Friendly, we're helping other people design, develop, and build out their ideas all the way from ideation to actually, continuing to do upgrades or whatever there is on different projects. And so we'd started doing that over the course of our college career. So we'd started with some small startups, and while that is still So Friendly's bread and butter, we scaled up our way to some big enterprise accounts like Margaritaville, Hilton, Google, Marriott, because the enterprise people are what pay the bills. So we did that. And then as the company kind of grew and grew and grew, and our company inherently became more and more remote, and people just kind of grew up, graduated, and got on with their lives, we realized there's not a great way to really communicate with your team across different time zones. So for example, our designer, or our director of design, Heather, she moved away, with her boyfriend, and she's gotten engaged now and married. One of our developers wanted to travel the world with his girlfriend. And so we realized communication just totally breaks down when you have a truly global team. So we've been sitting on the idea of Yak for a minute. Yak was, or is, all the context, clarity, and beauty that a phone call provides, just done asynchronously, kind of on your own time via voice messages. So we've been sitting on the idea for a while because we knew, hey, it just needed to exist. And then fast forward to November 2018, to Thanksgiving break, and Product Hunt, which if you don't know what Product Hunt is, I definitely recommend going check it out. producthunt.com, go check it out. Had their very first Makers Festival that was global. So basically, hey, over Thanksgiving break, build something within this 4 or 5 days that we have here. We'll pick a winner and we'll like promote it, and you get a cool little trophy, blah, 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 blah. Well, we were just kind of bored over Thanksgiving break. He said, you know what, this is our time to shine. We're going to build Yak. We're these random people from Orlando. Nobody knows who we are. We're gonna like just see what happens. And so heading into this thing, we had literally no network, nothing at all, literally no connections to tech, VC, anything like that. We built Yak, really scrappy version of it in 4 days, submitted it to Product Hunt's Makers Festival. And then before we knew it, I mean, honestly, it just exploded. It ended up crushing the competition. We got a massive wait list of 3,000 teams from like some pretty meaningful people like CBS, Spotify, Google, Bleacher Report, Barstool Sports. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And we were like, oh my gosh, we're these random no-name people from Orlando, Florida. And so, yeah, we had started it then. And then before we knew it, we actually got introduced to our first investor later that January over Twitter. He wrote us our first check, and we haven't looked back since. So that's kind of the inception, how my involvement in Yak has occurred.
That's pretty cool.
What year was that? Can you tell us what year was that, Jordan, that you did the Product Hunt thing?
Yeah, that was fall 2018, over Thanksgiving break. And then we got our first VC check or VC intro January 7th the following year. So a couple months went by.
Jordan, I want to, before we move a little further, you say you built a little scrappy version of Yak, and based on that, you got a lot of traction. What was the value proposition that you were trying to deliver the value that you're trying to deliver to people, and how was it? What did it look like in that very scrappy version? What was the minimum? What was the features in that scrappy version?
Yeah, so in the initial version, the value that we were really trying to convey is that when you have a truly distributed team across different time zones, scheduling and having a call is a real pain in the butt. You know, I take the example Derek, you know, our lead backend engineer to this day, he's literally, I think, in Egypt right now, and he's just hours, you know, ahead of us. There's no way we're going to ask him to hop on a Zoom call at like 1 p.m. for all of us. That's just ridiculous. It's the middle of the night for him. We can't communicate. So that was the original intention, is like, let's make communication easy for distributed kind of teams. And then to answer the second part of the question, as it relates to what that MVP looked like. So, I mean, it was really scrappy. Basically, you could just send a voice message, receive one, and that's it. It was just really, really, really scrappy. There was no fancy bells and whistles, no channels, no organization, no structure that we kind of have in Yak today. Just very boom, boom, that's it. But what's nice about that is that when you build a really scrappy MVP, it at least gets you enough that you can share with the community and people out there to say, like, or at least show, hey, here's the vision, here's where we want to go, like, here's what it's going to be, but here's like a really, really early idea of it. And it gets people to like really buy in and be invested in your story. Yeah. So hopefully that kind of answers the question. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool too, because in the case of Yak, it was a very clear product delivery. Like, what we want is people to be able to hear each other, these voice messages across a platform. It's funny to think about creating a platform that sends voice messages back and forth, that's needed, especially where we're using phones so differently, like, but that you could break it down to that simple of a thing is a really strong benefit for you. Like, I think sometimes we work with entrepreneurs where it's hard for them to boil down the value that they deliver to the customer to something that straightforward. Were you clear from the beginning that that was the kind of essence of your value, this like audio, or did you do any how did you know that that was the thing that you needed to deliver in that MVP?
Yeah, it was super clear to us for, I think, 2 reasons. So one is on the friendly side, for some of our bigger projects, or like our work team became remote, and we actually have some friends over in India that we work with. And, you know, that means, you know, before Yak, to communicate, we would have to stay up till 2, 3 a.m. to kind of like hop on these calls. And when it's 3 a.m. and I'm being honest with everybody, I was laying in bed taking these calls. I am not sitting here at my desk, you know, all fancy at 3 a.m. taking these calls. So one, I definitely didn't want to be on video. We didn't want a video platform. And then 2, like, we just saw the need for ourselves, like, through that, right? Like, we're realizing, oh my gosh, it's 3 a.m. just to have a freaking call. What if I could just send a voice message instead? So that way, when they wake up, they get like all of the context of what I'm saying. And then when I wake up, I can have all the context of what they're saying, and we never have to like meet in real time. So I think it was very clear for us from the jump because we were solving our own problem. And I'd say that's something that's like really, really critical to a lot of entrepreneurs when you're thinking about, you know, the value prop or that initial MVP is, what problem are you solving? Isn't it a problem that you experience day to day? And then just say that, like, that is the solution. So
yeah, so this is interesting because I'm thinking, like, this is 2018. For some reason, when you say voice was the key component of this and sending a message back and forth, I'm like, well, why don't you just like hit them on the cell phone and just leave a voice message? But you saw an issue with that, and I want to understand, what was the issue with just calling someone and leaving them a voice message, and then what was the issue with just sending a traditional text?
Yeah. So the problem with a call is that, one, you never know what you're going to get. When you call, you're expecting to hear someone on the other end, and you have to like wait, right? So you have to like wait for the ringtone to happen. You probably got to wait like 20, 30 seconds for that to happen. And you don't know if the person's going to pick up, if you're about to engage in a live conversation, or if you're getting the unintended consequence of leaving a voicemail. And then, you know, when you leave a voicemail, it's, so, you know, Casey's voicemail box is full. Please leave a message after the beep. And you have to go through like all that stuff. And just like before you know it, you're like, oh my God, I just want to send a freaking message really, really quickly.
Yeah.
And so a voicemail is kind of like an unintended consequence of a phone call. And then anything in life, like when you have or receive the unintended consequence of something, you're automatically going to kind of be pissed off. Whereas Yak, it's very intentional. Hey, I'm going to send a voice message. You go, oh, okay. Like I know, like I'm just sending a voice message and they can respond to it whenever they have their own time. I'm not expecting an immediate response. So that's probably, excuse me, probably one of like the biggest things to say there. And then also, since then we've added some like fancy bells and whistles to Yak. So like, we have transcriptions, we have titles, we have speed controls, all that stuff that like a traditional voicemail doesn't have today. And then obviously integrations as well.
Yeah. And then what about text?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Text, like just sending a text message.
Oh,
or email, like, hey, here's my ideas.
So this is again kind of going back to my my parents and my own childhood. So the problem with text, even as adults in any day-to-day, is that you cannot convey tone or emotion over text. I don't care who you are, it's impossible to convey tone or emotion over text. And we have all, and if you say you haven't, you're a liar. We have all gotten into a fight because somebody has said, something over text in a way that like you interpret as, well, they're pissed off, or like, oh, they're beefing with me, or, we got a problem. And the example that I love to give, God bless her, I love her to death, but my mom would just text me back sometimes and just say, K. And I'm just like, K, are you kidding me? Like, are we about to fight right now, mom? Like, do you have a problem with me? Like, is something wrong? But I'm being serious. That translates over into work as well. Somebody says K to you, and you're just like, wow, this like, what if you type in all caps, Sandra says in the chat? That's very funny. But right, like you see someone's yelling at you, or it's like, oh my gosh, like what is the context of this? Versus voice, that's the best way you can convey tone and emotion when you communicate with someone. Even now you guys can hear the energy, the inflection in my voice, and you can understand kind of the nuance, the context of what I'm saying. Whereas if I just, type this out all as like a one run-on paragraph over text, nobody's going to read that, or it just like doesn't have the same umph to it that me speaking does. So yeah. That's why.
Jordan, I love that you experienced the problem intimately. You knew the solution that you wanted. And then it sounds like you had been thinking about that solution for your problem, and then but built it based on your intuition that if we have this problem, other people are going to have this problem, and then invested as little as possible in that MVP, because you talk about the way it was really stitched together. And so do you feel like when you made that thing for Product Hunt, do you feel like you had much at stake? Like, do you think there was much risk in creating it? What did you spend in building that minimum viable product? How much was at stake in that MVP that you had built based on your own intuition of the problem?
Yeah, so between everybody's time and then just like literal like cost for it, from November to that January 7th time that we first got a VC intro, we put in about $10,000 total. So like very, very cheap. And actually at the time, because again, we had literally no network outside of Orlando, no connections to tech, VC, I mean, literally none. What we thought was, well, hey, Yak could be like actually a cool marketing vehicle to bring customers back into So Friendly, to show people what we could do. So it was a very like, like we were using it, but it was very much so like So Friendly was first, because So Friendly was killing it at the time. We were doing really, really awesome. Like we didn't need to go do a whole other startup, but Yak was just kind of that like gateway into this, this world of tech and VC. So.
Yeah, I really love that, because one of the things we talk about sometimes is not falling in love with the solution before it's been validated, spending a lot of time and effort and money on building something. And I love the idea that you knew the problem intimately. You had the team that could build it, and you build this very basic version and then find a way to test it. Do you see that Product Hunt was really some market validation for you, or how did you understand putting that into Product Hunt? What was your motivation there?
Yeah, so initially going into Product Hunt, the goal was, okay, let's just, honestly, just kind of like, let's see what happens. Let's see if we can just generate some traffic, or just meet like, our goal was literally like, can we meet a person that can like unlock a door for us? So we really had pretty low expectations for it. And then honestly, when it just like blew up, we were like, okay, we kind of have fire here. Like it would be like stupid for us to like squander this opportunity, or like, just say, now we're not going to like pursue this thing further. But really we had a goal of meeting one person who can unlock a door, and then also getting at least one person as like a customer for So Friendly at the time. So pretty low expectations, to be honest. But I mean, I guess, to answer the second part of your question, is that like when we did launch it, we ended up getting a lot of validation. Like people do experience a lot of the same problems that like Yak was solving. And that's when we were like, oh shoot, we should like continue to pursue this a little longer. So that's why we continue to work on it, longer than just that initial launch in November 2018.
Yeah. So you have the success, right? You build up this list. You build something very cheap, minimum viable, like extremely basic. Not a lot of resources go into it, but delivers perfectly on the value proposition. And then this list happens, and you have all this demand, right? So you put out this ugly thing, but people are like, hey, I want it. You build up this list. Talk to us about kind of the process of like what was next. Like how did you handle that list, and meaning like what was it? Did you say, okay, let's build a team around this, or let's figure out what we got to figure out what other infrastructure to add so we can support this? Like talk to us about the evolution after the list happens.
Yeah. So, okay. So like week one after, it kind of blows up, we're like, okay, we're working full time on So Friendly. So, all right, we have to manage this somehow. So what we did, we ended up closing it off, put everybody into like a beta program. We said, okay, at some point in time, honestly, at the time we had no idea when it was going to be. We'll roll this out to you kind of like in batches. So we'll do, 100 people this week, 100 people next week, and just kind of like roll it out that way so we can control it. And that way we have time for it. So that was step one. And then beyond that, we kept pursuing it and kind of building it until January 7th. January 7th, we got our first VC intro. And then after that, the priority became, okay, we actually need a deck and a website for this thing. We had no pitch deck, and we had no website for Yak at the time. So, all right, deck and website, boom, knocked that out. Did that, in a weekend. We sat around 48 hours straight, getting done, did that. And then beyond that, we actually had to figure out how to kind of like, not wind down So Friendly, but I mean, that was our full-time job at that point in time. How do we work less on So Friendly, and how do we work more on Yak? And so we kind of gradually did that over the next like month and a half or so. And then finally heading into was about February, March 2020 or 2019. I'm sorry, 2019. Like, okay, we can focus full time on Yak now. So what we started doing is slowly rolling out invites to Yak in kind of like a beta program. And so this is actually something I'd recommend to everybody. By rolling it out in batches, it actually kind of organically started to create hype around it. So, people were like, oh my gosh, I'm in batch one of Yak, let me get in. And then they would post that. And then other people were like, well, wait, I want to get in. Or like, where's my invite? How do I get in? And we realized we started creating this like hype that we didn't mean to. But like people were really, it was like increasing demand even more. People were like, oh my gosh, I have to get in this thing. Like, how do I get involved? Like, move me up into the next batch. I got to get in there immediately. And so that was, what became the focus during that summer. And then obviously just continued product development. But that's kind of like the immediate priorities that happened, post launching.
Yes, it's so one, I think and this is something that's consistent with what we try to help our entrepreneurs understand, is that one, you don't have to say yes to everything, right? First, you could put out something ugly and it's okay as long as it delivers on the value proposition. That's number one.
It was really ugly.
The second thing is that you can tell people to wait, right? And not fear that you're going to lose it, right? Because there is one of the challenges is taking things on too much on at one time and over straining your resources to the point where it becomes actually detrimental, right? It's just to your progress moving forward. So waiting, it'll be available in the future. And then The other thing I think that is really interesting is that you had a sense of like you had to make a choice. So Friendly was making money for you, um,
I was doing really well.
doing really well, but this other thing comes up, and you had to make a decision on where do you, because you only have a small team, where do you put your resources?
Mhm.
Did the what was part of that decision? Was it because you received money and it gave you the the resources to be able to pursue that fully, or did the money come in? Like, where did the money fall in, and how did that attribute to, like, what attributed to you switching from shutting down So Friendly and moving over to Yak? Was it the money, or was it something else, or a combination of a few things?
I mean, the money was definitely nice because it just like freed us up to like work on it for the year. But honestly, I think it was really the potential networking opportunities. So to kind of give more color into it, just like the people that we know and kind of like the VC, right, and how that worked out, is that the very first VC, who I've talked about that we got reached out to is Adam Draper from Boost VC. And for those of you that don't know him, his dad is Tim Draper, OG Silicon Valley VC Titan. He's involved in SpaceX, Tesla, Facebook. I mean, like early checks in those companies. I'm like, wow, Adam Draper, like he is like legit. And then Adam was like, you know what? Actually, I have some friends who would really like this. Let me introduce you to BetaWorks. In BetaWorks, they're out of New York. They're like the pre-seed seed venture fund in the country, maybe even in the world. They were early check in Giphy, Gimlet Media, TweetDeck, Kickstarter. The list just goes on and on and on. And like, I know BetaWorks, like just in general, like one of the founders of BetaWorks, or one of the partners, Peter Rojas, he was the founder of, why am I totally losing? Oh, Gizmodo, the big blog that, and kind of everybody has seen before. I was like, I know BetaWorks, like these guys are legit. And so we had a conversation around it. We're like, man, from just like this one interaction, we've met two really big time people who can unlock a lot of doors for us. And like, imagine if we pursue this for, another year or so, what we can kind of do, how we can grow our network, the people that we can meet. And that was honestly the biggest deciding factor, is that, yeah, we can just meet a lot more people kind of doing this way. And, people and networking is really everything kind of in business. So that was the first deciding factor. The second is that we did have the cash to, free us up to work on it for at least that year. And then the third is, obviously there's demand behind it. People wanted this thing very clearly. And so, let's serve these people that need this product.
I just keep coming back to this idea that you guys produced this MVP and took it to Product Hunt. And I know that the Product Hunt is a space where people are used to seeing MVPs, but it's occurring to me that like there's a degree of confidence that you all had that said, we've been running this company that does something different. We could create this thing and take it to this audience of people. And I'm just like wanting to pause there a little bit for everybody on the call. And I just put in the chat a little bit. It might be worth thinking about what's your version of a Product Hunt. Like, where are the people that would resonate with your MVP gathering, where you could drop this thing in and get maximum exposure as quickly as possible? So Propel and Impact, where are the nonprofit funders and practitioners congregating, right? Kia and Joshua, where are the builders going, right? Sandra, where are the educators? And Sterling, where are the educators going, right? What's our version of a Product Hunt where we can take an MVP and get eyes on it? Like, that seems so valuable for you guys, Jordan. If you didn't have Product Hunt, can you imagine a way where you would have gotten visibility like that? What other strategy might you have taken if you didn't have it there?
So one of the things that has worked really well for us and is applicable to literally every single person on this call is Twitter. Honestly, I'd say Product Hunt was kind of like the launch pad for us, but Twitter has been the catapult that has taken us from, so like Product Hunt was like 0 to 1. Twitter has taken us from 1 to like just a gazillion now. So I'd say if you're not on Twitter, definitely get on Twitter, because these VCs, these other founders, these customers, these people that like you want to interact with and be in your life are on Twitter. And it's very easy to kind of have like a normal human conversation with them. One thing that a lot of, not to get it down the fundraising rabbit hole, but these VCs, and I've seen it with our own, they get so many emails just, hello, sir, please invest in my company, or hey, please do this. And they're like, I get so much of that crap. I just want to have like normal conversations with people and just like someone to talk to me like a human. So like on Twitter, it's very easy to mention someone and say like, hey, do you want to like, play video games sometime? Or like, I don't know, do you want like your own version of, whatever that is? For me, it's video games, but like for you, it might be something else. And so yeah, Twitter is that launch pad that takes you from one to the next level beyond that.
Yeah, so I would actually, because I had to think back about the value of Twitter, and it is more it's definitely a different medium than Facebook. It's definitely different than Instagram. And I remember that the value of Twitter was it allowed you to dive in and participate in an existing conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember in the education space when I was doing doing education work that there would be conferences and things happening around education or specific topics. And although I wasn't there, it gave me an opportunity to drop in and get eyes, not only, or get ears, not only in my voice, but then also the work I was doing. And it was really a successful thing for me. Like the whole hashtag and finding the right conversations on Twitter to jump into. And so with all of you on the call, like I really, I agree with you about that there are conversations happening at scale and with individuals you want that you can drop in and provide your thought leadership to, and get eyes on your product, as well as also LinkedIn, right? Like LinkedIn is a great thing, also has become a good thing in terms of conversations about social entrepreneurship and groups, and joining those groups and participating in those conversations to get ears on your voice and eyes on your product. So I appreciate you bringing Twitter up, because Twitter's like the weird stepchild, and it's gotten kind of really weird over the last 4 years with all the stuff going on. But there's a lot of value in Twitter. Jordan, before we move into the Q&A, like, are there some 1-2 gems that you would love to be able to drop on to mic drop onto to our fellows on this call and people watching this, like about whether entrepreneurship or how to live your life in entrepreneurship in a healthy way? Like, what are those 1 or 2 nuggets that you would like to drop? And then don't rush through them. Take your time.
Sure. So the one nugget I love sharing with people that has just worked super, super well in my life, my co-founder's life, and just the people really close to me, is that showing up to these places is literally just 70% of the battle. Just showing up, just being present, just being that person that's willing to say yes. Don't think you're better than someone. Just say yes. And really, it kind of goes back to the golden rule that we all learned when we're younger, is treat others the way that you want to be treated. It sounds so corny, but one thing that I think is really toxic in tech right now in entrepreneurship is everybody's trying to do this thing called social engineering, which I freaking hate that term, social engineering. And the way that I think about it is we shouldn't be trying to social engineer any person. You should just be friends with someone or be kind to someone, because you should just be kind to someone. That's just the right thing to do. So what I would say and encourage everybody here is just like show up to the conversations, just say yes, and then just see what happens. Give without an expectation and run with that. That is my one-liner.
Yeah, that probably resonates with Ben, because he loves the whole friend thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say I love that, man. That's beautiful. I found that for sure in my life over 10 years trying to start stuff, is that half of it is being willing to listen, to show up to conversations, to imagine a way you might collaborate, then to do what you say you're going to do. And can you, and the quickest way to build friendships is to see how you can help them do what they want to do. And then once you have friends, anything can happen.
Anything.
So I love that, man.
It's
so anybody said that, it makes me happy.
It's so true. I mean, I'm happy to talk about it offline with anybody, and I could spend hours telling stories about it, but just like, there's so many stories where by just showing up and saying yes, we've had massive doors unlocked for us. And literally that takes no effort on our end. The effort is maybe 10% of what actually putting in the work, but just showing up and saying yes, super easy to do. So
Nice. Is there, do you have another nugget that you would like to bestow upon this group, or would you
I
love to
think
jump to Q&A?
the last nugget that I'll kind of drop here is that for anybody, thinking about raising VC funding, or if you might be frustrated or whatever, is that this is hard. Like building a business is hard. Raising funding is hard. Getting customers is hard. So like, don't get discouraged or play that comparison game where, well, that person's doing this or this person's doing that. No, everybody's had their shit that they've gone through. Sorry. Everybody's had their stuff that they've gone through. And so, just kind of keep in mind, focus on you, do what you got to do, and just run with that. Worry about yourself. Don't worry about anybody else when it comes to building your business.
That's good. All right. Let's open it up to Q&A. Let's see here. Anybody have any questions for Jordan?
I got a question.
Yeah.
And it kind of spins almost off of what you just said about kind of like focus on yourself, don't worry about other people really. So it also kind of in the same vein that Kyle was asking earlier about some of the existing solutions comparable to Yak, I guess, like whether it be voicemail or text messages. It also made me like move into the thought of like, well, I know I can record like video, I can record audio in WhatsApp and send that to people, and then there's Slack and you can send files and whatnot in it. So my mind initially like went to like competition. Like it seems like there's a lot of competition in the space, and obviously there's some substantial like value propositions and differentiators between Yak and these others. But I was wondering if you could just share a little bit from your experience, like how you mentally approached competition in the space, if you did at all, or if you just totally like ignored what else is out there and you just like balls to the wall and what you guys were building and really heads down and focused on that, or if you had to, especially raising funds, because I'm sure like one of the first things that a lot of the VCs asked you guys was like, well, what about this app? What about that app? So I was wondering if you could just share a little bit on your approach to competition and really what your mental position was on that.
Yeah, sure. So for competition that I would say that requires you to punch up like Slack, we actually take the approach of, well, hey, how can we approach them and work with them and integrate with them? So actually we're fortunate enough where Slack's actually invested in us twice and we have a pretty tight integration with them. But the thesis before that was, okay, we know Slack could kind of launch this at any point in time. What things would prevent Slack from doing this? And we said, okay, well, they're a big corporate company, which inherently means they move slow. So, hey, let's approach Slack and say, hey, looks like lots of people are asking for voice messaging in your thing. We have this thing already built. Like, how do we kind of like work together? And so like, when you punch up, say, okay, think about it as like, okay, how do we like work together, kind of like collaborate? For competition that's either at your level or beneath you, I would honestly just say like tunnel vision, like don't even worry about it. Like it's so pointless and kind of futile to like worry about what they're doing. Because like you have your own roadmap in your head. Like they know what the next feature is going to be. They know what the next launch is going to be. So it's just kind of like pointless to think about, what adjacent competition kind of might look like. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how we think about it, at least, and it helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And the punching up approach is like, it's fairly like clever, like, and if you can't beat them, join them type thing. And that's really cool. When speaking with like on the fundraising front and kind of working with the institutional funds and so forth, like did the answer of like we're tunnel vision on what we're doing, we don't really care what the surrounding competition, at least on our scale and below us, looks like, was that received well? And did they see, was that viewed as like confidence and viewed as like it doesn't matter what's going on, we're going to win regardless? Or did you have pushback on that?
Yeah, generally it's seen as confidence. So I mean, I want to be clear, don't like be ignorant to competition. Like you should be able to like list like your competitors to some degree. But yeah, like don't worry about like their future releases when they have a launch or stuff like that. And actually, like you said, you nailed it completely. Is like when you approach investors, like it kind of displays confidence or like a drive of like, oh yes, this makes a lot of sense. Like we're like that person, that founder is just focused on what they're doing and they're not going to be distracted by anything else, because time spent worrying and focusing on competitors is time inherently not spent in worrying and focusing on your own shit. So that's what investors want to see.
If I could expand just a little bit, you spoke about your roadmap, and I'd love to, we've been talking about that internally a lot here, is about, how we work with our our product roadmap and the, customer feedback. So, looking at your product now, it's really expanded from where it was before.
Yeah.
Right? Like, especially like the screen sharing, the asynchronous screen sharing, all that kind of stuff, which seems great. So is that part of your vision to begin with? And it was just, or was it one of those things that you really became much more asynchronous and screen sharing as you got product customer feedback? So I'd love to hear about kind of your product evolution as you were really small, kind of trying to scale up. What was that evolution like?
Yeah, so screen share was definitely not in like the initial roadmap, but we put it in based on feedback from customers. We realized people said, hey, voice is really awesome, but sometimes when I'm coding or I'm developing something or I'm working on a website, I really need them to see the contents of my screen. And so we'd still have to hop on a Zoom call for the sake of screen sharing. We said, well, you know what if you could just kind of do async screen shares? And it kind of just evolved and became a part of the product that way. So obviously, we tested it, slowly rolled it out, worked in sprints, like, I'd recommend everybody do. But it kind of gradually became a feature inside of Yak based on talking to customers and getting feedback.
Would you say the majority of your features came from customer feedback, or the majority of features were actually part of your original, kind of vision, and then you've just been, and you've made small tweaks based over time?
I would say probably 70% of the features came from customers, and then everything else was kind of like core to the vision and was like minor tweaks. So, we knew at the core voice messaging with speed controls and transcripts. Like, we knew that's at the core, that's what Yak is going to be. But then people wanted, well, hey, we want channels. We want to be able to organize conversations. Well, hey, we want to be able to emoji react to it in case I don't want to just send a Yak back saying, okay, hey, I want to be able to send a screen share. So a lot of our features kind of evolved based on customer feedback. And what we do is, as we collect the feedback, we actually kind of like internally rank the feedback. So we say, screen share in the last month has gotten 53 votes, for example. Looks like we're going to build screen share next, or like at least think about how does that kind of like line up with Yak as like an async messenger and what that looks like down the road. Obviously, screen share totally in line with that. So like that's why we added into the product.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, because we're about to release a founder talk with a guy named Heath Hensley over at Power DMS. And as I was going through it, one of the things he talked about was, how do you handle customer requests, right? And he says, well, you create these teams, right? These feature committees or boards where they're constantly ruminating over stuff and helping you to better understand products and stuff, and you can do that. But then there's this other thing he was talking about, is attaching it to ROI and saying, if we create this feature, what lift does it require? What's the burden that it's required? And then what ROI do we get out of it? And so he looked at it very objectively, and they would put all their features in there. So it's really cool to hear you apply, like, just because a customer say that they want a feature, doesn't mean that you throw it in. You have to apply, be objective to that feature, and understand, like, against, like, what does it cost you to build that feature, and what does it get you? And it sounds like you kind of did that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's also just making sure that it lines up with like the long-term vision. Before I was talking to a guy, he said, well, I want trimming and I want clipping and I want all this stuff. And I was like, you're describing a podcasting app. Yak is never going to be that. So kind of, as a founder, it takes your own intuition to say, okay, is this really kind of in line with the long-term vision, or it's just, a completely different product that they're asking features for. So.
And I would say, discipline too, because that's one of the things he's talked about, that even as they have scaled and have sold that company off and they're involved in new stuff, like he was saying, constantly going back to a discipline, getting your emotions out of the way, as he calls it, putting it to the side and being extremely disciplined and remembering what you just said. Okay, somebody had a question.
Yeah, Kyle, I was just going to.
Okay.
Hey, Jordan, just wanted to go back to your comment on spending time. Of course, I mean, between the stage at which you're testing your MVP to also trying to fundraise and also talking to more customers, to source more customers. As a founder, where do you think, any thoughts on how you should be spending your time as a founder during a day or a week? Just trying to understand time management.
I think the answer that I always tell people is that, like, one, it's relative to your skill set. So like, if you are like an amazing developer, you should just like be working on product and like writing code all week. If you're an amazing salesperson, go like raise VC funding and like get that done. So you should just like focus on like what you're really good at, because if you triple down on like what you're really good at during that relative week, then like the other pieces will like come to like fill it in themselves. So like, again, if you're really good at product, work on your product. One person's going to use it. And if it's amazing, they're going to like recommend more people, and eventually a VC will find it and you will get funded. If you're really good at sales, but like not great on product side, we'll like go pitch like a VC immediately and then like, get funding, and then you can figure out customers later when you have so much money in the bank. So I think it's just like relative to like what you're really good at. For me, I'm really good at like my co-founders hate when I say this, but like stakeholder relations, if you will. It sounds so corporate-y, but like partnerships, funding, customers, business development, finances, HR, everything kind of really like external facing that requires people. That's what I'm really good at. So like, okay, I'm going to go focus my time on that. Everything else will kind of follow suit beyond that.
I'm glad you actually brought that up, because I was wondering what went to the decision making, because you say you're the founder, or is it two founders, or?
So there's three of us, and we've all been working together since 2013.
Okay, so that's Justin, Hunter, and then you, right?
Yep.
Okay, and then in terms of your decision, because I was wondering, like, how did y'all come to the decision on who's CEO, CMO, and COO? But it sounds like you assessed your skill sets, and based on that,
it's really funny. So Justin is also very technically proficient. So like of us three, are all dangerously enough technical, but Justin's the very technical one. Justin is also he's very extroverted at all times. Like I can do this, but like after like 5 hours, I'm just like, all right, I'm tapped. I need to like go be by myself and like lay down. Justin's the person you can put at a conference from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at night by himself, and he will go have like the craziest story at the end of it. And then Hunter is just like the most insane marketer I've ever met in my entire life. Like it's so weird. Like some people have like a formula for like going viral on the internet. Hunter is just like one of those like magical people who has like figured out how to go viral on the internet. Like Twitter even like posted something that he wrote like on a billboard in like the middle of New York. So he's really good at stuff like that. But I see there's a hand raised, so I can jump to that. Really quick.
Yeah. We have one more question. Sandra, why don't you go ahead and be our last question?
Hey, Jordan. So you mentioned to raise money if you're not good at product. I do think I'm good at product. I used to be better with people, but it feels since like COVID, I've been like,
yeah.
Kaya, and I'm a product manager. So making software is super easy for me. But I wanted to ask you, because the reason why it was out of a need, it was like when I'm studying, I don't know, like my background is in engineering, and there's so many like sleepless where you're figuring out for like thermodynamics problems, right? So what if you have an Uber type of platform that can just, match you with somebody that knows how to fix or not fix this problem, but like knows how to drive you through the solution and help you figure it out. Like, right, what if you have somebody to help you figure it out? Like Uber, call somebody. And obviously, because I thought of like an Uber, I said like something that's, also accessible on price, because tutoring is like $80 an hour. That is ridiculous. I would never pay for that. So I made that happen for myself from Peru. But now that, I'm trying to like raise money and, like get more customers, I'm also trying to reach out to school districts, because I do have a lot of connections. And, and that's also going to help at the end of the day, like my beneficiary who are my tutors, so smart kids in third world countries, right? What do you think about that strategy? Like, should I just like raise money and like you said, figure out my customers later? Or should I like raise money if I have a way to make money?
I would say, so, I mean, if you want to raise money in general, I would say, and just like this kind of goes for everybody, I would say if you're thinking about raising money, go raise money right now, because frankly, it's very, very, very easy to raise VC funding right now. And the market is insanely hot and filled with money that you should just go get it while you have it available to you. So that's like my answer to that question. I would say if you're thinking about raising money, or like you want to raise money at some point in time, go do it now, because it's very easy to acquire and raise money right this second.
Yeah, cool. Well, listen, we're out of time. We want to respect your time. Man, Justin, it's been cool having you. I'm not Justin, Jordan.
It's all good. It's all good.
I was thinking about your CEO. It was really cool having you on here and listening to your story. you've definitely helped us make the case on why Central Florida should be a hub for social entrepreneurs around the world, because they can come in and tap into people like you. Real quick, why are you guys in Kissimmee, right?
Yeah, so actually it's really funny. So we used to be in Startup Studio in downtown Orlando, and then we actually, the lady who owns our building, she's just a friend of ours, and she's like, hey, I'll give you a really good rent in Kissimmee. Like we pay like almost nothing for it.
Perfect.
And we're like, hell yeah, like we're pretty remote anyway. It's just like a place for like when investors and people come to town that we can take them. So it works.
Yeah, man, that's good. Listen, we appreciate you for joining us today and doing this Founder Talks with us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you all for having me. It was a blast.